Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be the Reading Tastes tag. The Reading Tastes tag was created by Sophia's Thoughts. I will link to her channel below. I was not tagged to do this, but I think genuinely 75% of the people that I watch did this tag over the past couple of weeks, so I just felt left out, so I'm going to do it too. So here we go. Question number 1 is, what is your favorite genre? My favorite genre in fiction is histographic metafiction, which is where there's lots of jumping around in time and nothing should be linear. My favorite genre in nonfiction is probably a split between memoir and social histories that are set in wartime. Question number 2 is, what is the genre that is most difficult for you to read? I don't know that there's really a genre that, well, no, that's not true. I find spiritual self-help to be generally frustrating because it's funny, you often see people who say that they're not religious but they're spiritual. I don't mind religion, but keep the spirituality out of things. I don't know. So I find that hard to read. That would be in nonfiction. In fiction, I think the genre that I have the most difficulty being fair with is romance, because I do read it sometimes, but I find myself probably a little nitpickier than I am with a lot of other genre fiction. Like, I think if I were reading an equivalent mystery, I tend to be slightly less nitpicky with that, and I don't really know why that is. Maybe because I'm just not very romantic, I don't know. Question number 3 is, what is your preferred age range? And I will say I don't really have one. However, I am not a big fan of specifically quest fantasies that are written for a teenage audience with teenage characters. Like, I don't mind if the characters are in that age range, but it's written for children or it's written for adults. But when it's teenagers for a teenage audience, I feel like the fantasy genre isn't well served, at least insofar as the elements of it that I like, which, you know, involves a lot of decapitations. That sounds ridiculous. Question number 4 is, are you a character-driven or plot-driven reader? I don't know, that's kind of a difficult question for me because I tend to be drawn more to setting and style than I am to either character or plot, frankly. Although of the two, I suppose maybe character, I don't know. I'm gonna say character just because I do read some superhero comics that have crossover events that I hate, so I hate the plot, but I still read them because I like the characters, so I'm gonna say character driven, but that's usually not actually what I go to reading for, or what drives my reading. Question number 5 is, do you have a preferred perspective? I don't, although I quite like second person. And I've seen a few people do this and say that it's not usually done well, but I think it's not usually done at all. And like, the 2 examples I can think of are Harry Parker's Anatomy of a Soldier, which is a novel that's essentially narrated by items, and the items talk to you as though you are the character. And I like that. I think that worked really well. And the other place that the only other place I can think of where that happens is in the old Choose Your Own Adventure books. And I think that's great fun. Especially because when I was a kid, I used to read those out loud to one of my friends, and we did it almost as a game where she would make the choices, but I would read it. And I think that works because you're saying, you do this and you do that. So yeah, I like second person. I wish there were more books using that. Question number 6 is, do you have a preferred tense? And when it comes to reading, no, not really. I do tend to write in the present continuous, which annoys people who read my writing, and obviously for fiction. So nonfiction pretty much has to be, I was going to say pretty much has to be past tense, but that's not true because I've read some memoirs where it's as though it's happening in the moment, and I think that can be pretty compelling too. So yeah, I don't know. I cannot break myself of writing. Like, whenever I do something like NaNoWriMo, I'll start writing it in past tense or something standard, and it becomes the present continuous, which I realize is really annoying for other people to read. Question number 7 is, do you like series or standalone books best? In general, standalone books, but I don't mind a series. I'm not a big fan of the endless fantasy series because I think they just meander on, but I think a lot of mystery series work well in mysteries. I think people like to pretend that literary fiction doesn't come in series, but they definitely do, and some of my favorite pieces of literary fiction are from series. Like Pat Barker's Regeneration trilogy, Pat Barker's Life Class trilogy. Michael Ondaatje's duology of In the Skin of the Lion and The English Patient. I really enjoy things like that. But yes, primarily I read things that are standalones, but that is mostly just because I'm primarily reading nonfiction, so. Although maybe that's a lie, because I do read a lot of comic books that are serials, and that are like proper serials that are collections of even smaller items, so yeah, I guess it's a toss-up for me. Question number 8 is, which would you rather, long or short books? I like books of moderate length. No, I mean, it depends what it is. I like a reference book to be very long. Anything that is supposed to be, I don't know, nonfiction that is meant to be taken seriously, so something that's not a memoir or a quick guide to something, really ought to be longer, because frankly, if it's not really long, how thick can the reference section be? If you don't have a good reference section, how good is this going to be, right? When it comes to fiction, though, I mean, I think there are so many writers who they get to a certain point in their careers and their books are endless. Somebody needs to edit those down. So, I mean, I don't know, it depends. Question number 9 is, which format do you like best? I'm a big fan of mass market paperbacks. They're convenient. I like ebooks as well, but then you have the dilemma of, what if I drop this in a puddle? It will destroy this device. Or, you know, if the apocalypse happens and there's no electricity, how are you going to charge that? Whereas mass market paperbacks, always good. But yeah, barring an apocalypse or clumsiness, ebooks, but otherwise mass market paperbacks. And when it comes to comics, I like the album style more than the floppy style. Question number 10 is, what are you currently reading? I'm currently reading the autobiography of Malcolm X with a group. Oh, that's great. Actually, by the time I post this, we will probably be done, so I won't be reading this ongoing anymore. I'm also popping in and out of Blood and Soil, which is a history of genocide, which is a big, thick book that I'm not really reading straight through, but which I think I may have talked about in a wrap-up that I haven't filmed yet, but I'm going to right after this, so, and it'll probably go up before this. This is confusing. Never mind. Okay, those are all the questions. Because I wasn't actually tagged, I'm not going to tag anyone, but if you, like me, have been watching people do this tag and thinking, why hasn't someone tagged me? Just do it. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.